Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday. No, it is Friday, March 21st, 2025. This is a regular meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We're live, City Hall Commissioners Room, second floor. I'd like to call this meeting to order at exactly 2:00 p.m. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Mark Saunders.
Present.
Commissioner Suzanne Good.
Present.
Commissioner Ed Chernowski, absent. Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Bunky Markert.
Here.
Commissioner Craig Thier.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills is here. While we don't have a full complement, we do have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. Welcome, everybody. With that, I'd also like to identify some of the city staff that's here that helps us run to the meeting. City Secretary Ann Womack, hidden behind the monitors over there. City Manager Taylor Tedder. Assistant City Manager Evan Miller. Chief Keith Banks. Communications Specialist Lynn Cohen, Public Works Director Henry Matlos, and I think we got everybody. We indicated to our interim city solicitor that he did not need to be here today, and so there's an absent chair in his place also. With that, we'll move right on. I want to mention, remind everybody to thank you, those that are watching virtually, and also thank you that are here in person. The rules for comment on topic and off topic are embedded into the agenda. If you go to the bottom of the agenda, you'll see what our guidelines are. I also want to remind everybody that support documents, those are documents that support our agenda items when they're ready a sufficient time ahead of the meeting, are also embedded in the agenda, and you can see those online also. I'd like to make note that there is no correspondence to identify. And the approval of minutes, there are none ready for approval at this meeting. And with that, we'll move right on to the city manager's report. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. The first item I'd like to note is the Rehoboth Avenue repaving returning next month. DelDOT and its contractor ADEL are returning next month to finish what they started this fall on Rehoboth Avenue. Repaving of the avenue between 2nd Street and the traffic circle will likely begin the second week of April, with plans to complete the work by May 16th. As you may recall, the paving of Rehoboth Avenue from the bandstand to 2nd Street was completed in the fall before the work was halted in mid-December due to early arrival of cold temperatures. The city did have a contract with DelDOT to pave from 2nd Street to the bandstand. We did budget $750,000 for that, and the amount billed to the city by DelDOT was $300,000 under the budgeted amount, so that was really good news. Work will take place overnight from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday evening through Friday morning. Lane closures and parking restrictions will be necessary in the work zones. Flaggers will be on site to assist with traffic control. And where possible, the city will work with the contractor to ensure that parking on one side of the street remains open. For example, if one storefront parking is closed in an area, then the median parking will remain open if available. All right, the Beach Patrol project. Work at the new Beach Patrol Comfort Station facility continues to progress quite nicely. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing inspections have been completed, and the workers are beginning to hang drywall. The roof is 90% complete, and the remaining roof work will be coordinated with installation of the exterior siding, which will continue over the next few weeks. Trench drains around the building are being installed, and the elevator installation is ongoing. Block and ceiling painting is expected to begin on the first floor next week. The city's ready to help residents spring clean. The city's free spring bulk pickup will take place April 28th through May 2nd on the south side of town, including the Schoolview area and Scarborough Street Extended, and May 5th through 9th on the north side of town. Check your At Your Service section at rehobothbeachde.gov for bulk items that are accepted and those that are not. So speaking of sprucing up for spring, city contractors will be pruning trees April 7th through 10th, weather permitting. Spring pruning will take place on Cookman Street, Dover Street, 4th Street, Kent Street, Park Avenue, Rehoboth Avenue, Sussex Street, and 3rd Street. And I'd like to extend congratulations to our own Oliver Velasquez Rodriguez for passing his Level 2 wastewater operator exam. Oliver has been with the city for 3 years, and he started in the streets department before transferring over to the wastewater department. DelDOT is hosting a public information session on April 7th about maintenance work that will be undertaken at the Rehoboth Avenue drawbridge later this year. The work on the Rehoboth Avenue Bridge is part of a larger project, and work in Rehoboth isn't expected to take place until the fall at the earliest. The information session, which will be held 5 p.m. Monday, April 7th at the Convention Center, will cover how traffic will be impacted. And street aid, this month's street aid expenditures included an $11,578.83 payment to Delmarva Power. And I'm here for any questions you may have.
Any questions of the city
Mayor?
manager? Mark had his hand up first.
Quick question, is there any update on the dock, the wall, the land leading down to the dock?
Sure. So, Henry, you can add to this if you'd like. So we have engaged with Wallace Montgomery. They do this type of work. They have a whole section that does this type of work. So they are actively looking at it. And we should have a presentation, I think, in April for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Good?
Thank you. Mr. Tedder, I maybe should have asked Mr. Matlos this question earlier, but the cutouts by Browse-About Books in the sidewalks with the, the ramps for ADA that unfortunately have reduced the width of the sidewalk, is that should we now consider those to be permanent? Or, there was some discussion of those being remediated, which would be sad. I mean, they had just gone in to be, so would you update us on the status of those ADA ramps?
Sure. So we've looked at what that would cost to change them, and we can. No decision's been made yet, but we could look at changing them if that's a desire of the Board of Commissioners.
But regardless, nothing would be done before summer.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
All right. Anybody else? No? Very good. That's all you have?
Yep.
All righty. Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to departmental reports. Let me slip in here first that we have Alderman Court report, Building and Licensing Department and Code Enforcement reports, Communications Department report, and a generic police report already embedded in the agenda, so you can have a lot of basic information there. But with that, we're going to turn next to the departmental briefing. If you recall, we have a departmental briefing program, I'll call it, where we have different departments come in at different times of the year and give us an update on what has taken place or in the last year and or what is going to happen into the near future. Chief?
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, General Public. Again, thank you for allowing me this time to address the board. I was last here in December with the Communications Supervisor, and he gave us a briefing update. So what's been going on for the first 2 months of the year, 2.5 months of the 2025. I'll start off with Beach Patrol, and I just have some comments to make. I don't have a formal presentation. Beach Patrol, recruiting and testing. Captain Giles reported that he is anticipating on having approximately 40 returning guards this year, so that's really good. His entire leadership team is also returning. Overall, he will need to hire around 20 guards, and he has seen an increase in applications. He contributes this to the salary increase. We've gone up to $21 an hour, along with several social media ads, and hopefully you've taken the time to see some of those out there. It's been really good. The first tryouts will be March 22nd. So that's tomorrow, followed by March 29th and April 5th. So we feel like we're going to have a full complement again this year. And we are looking at having at least 3 ambassadors. We actually are getting a lot of look at people wanting to be ambassadors on the beach walking for us. I think that's another great thing. The 911 Communications Center, has made significant advancements in tracking and quality assurance processes so far over the winter. We have successfully transitioned to using the front line. We talked about that in December, the QA portal for all the daily observation reports and training documents, improving accessibility for both trainees and supervisors. Additionally, we have begun the process of returning reviewed calls through the QA portal, enhancing feedback and efficiency, and ensuring continuous improvement in our handling our calls in 911 Center, and the product has actually gone up. Our scores have gone up from this already. This year, all evaluations were also completed using the frontline system, reinforcing the standardized approach to performance assessments that the city manager and Gene previously spoke about during budget sessions. On the staffing and training front, the center is fully staffed with 12 communication specialists, with 2 employees actively progressing through the training program. Both trainees are on track, and we anticipate having all employees fully trained and assigned to permanent shifts by June. This is the first time in over 5 years we've been fully staffed. So, and I just want to take this moment to just say thank you publicly for all my dispatchers for all their work for the years working, being mandated to come in and working overtime and things like that. Had on their days off, it meant a lot. Police services and calls. Overall, so far, the call volumes have increased about 10.5% from the same period last time. Traffic stops, and we've actually increased by 140 stops compared to last year. Citations, we've issued 585, and warnings, 355. Vehicle crashes are up slightly this year so far, and noise disturbance and disorderly cause have decreased. Major crime is also down compared to last year. 0 robberies, rapes, or burglaries or theft from vehicles are reported. And however, we are seeing an uptick in online fraud cases, basically scams. People are getting passwords, identity theft, and things like that. And even with the housing, people rent homes, come down here, and they're other individuals' homes. And also, we're seeing that, but we're not unique. And then domestics have, again, slightly been on a rise. It's mostly alcohol and drug-related at times. EMS fire calls, some information. 911 disconnects by sellers are up. CPR-related calls remain stable, but it's with a slight decrease. Overdose incidents remain steady, but we have still seen a minor decrease in the overdose responses in our area. Structure fire incidents declined across all categories, including a drop in commercial structure fires. We had 6 this time last year, and we've had 0, so that's really good for our community that we protect. However, in 2024, the 911 Center showed a 9% increase overall in incoming calls and calls for service over 2023. We're seeing the same above call volume so far in 2025, particularly with EMS as reported to you by the fire department earlier this year. So some things that's going on in the police department. Tracy Rummel is now my executive assistant. She started her position January 27th and is doing an outstanding job. She replaced Marion Jones that retired on January 31st after 31 years of service. We have been collaborating with the Delaware Archives. We do this every year, and we're finally almost finished as far as getting everything online microfished and all and destroyed to destruction. So we're freeing up a lot of room in the basement and things. So we continue to work on that and getting other things up in our K drive. So that's been a big project this winter we've done, and we're finally finishing up with that. Hiring processes for the seasonal officers. We have implemented a new program for hiring seasonal officers, which have proven to be both successful and efficient. Again, this year we're offering $21.50 an hour. So far we have hired 15 of our officers. Our final interviews are scheduled to take place on March 25th. Additionally, the city has arranged accommodation for out-of-state officers. So I want to thank you guys for that and supporting that, as well as all the work that our city manager's done on that project. The first 4 weekends of training will begin April 25th for the summer officers and continue through May 18th. The Commission on Police Training mandates seasonal officers to have 82 hours of core classes, but through our training, because we have a tourist industry and all that, we actually host 136 hours of combined training for them, so we're exceeding what's mandated by law. I will also put an email out to each of the Mayor and Commissioners to invite for our first day of training, if you would like to say a few words to our summer officers. You don't have to be there, I always like to extend a opportunity. Full-time hiring, we have been given conditional hires to 2 applicants, and we're working to get their documents and everything up to the academy for them to start on April 27th. Just on a side note, both of our applicants that we give conditional job hires to are female. So I think that's a great thing for our department. Sergeant Scott O'Beer, after 28 years of service, will retire on May 14th. So all his paperwork is through on that, so we'll be looking to backfill his position. Some other things, just to let you know, we worked with one over the winter, mandatory reporting and compliances. As we know in government, we always have those reports that are due in the year. So in accordance with Title 11, Chapter 84, the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission, POST as it's called now, is responsible for overseeing initial training standards and service training standards and elective and advanced training for law enforcement officers. And a post-annual survey is conducted to assess the officer's compliance with post rules and regulations. It's a mouthful. So we got all that in, and we've actually got a report back from the state saying we passed everything, and our training is up to date for our officers and our seasonal officers and things like that. So we're really proud of that. It's time-consuming. It's a lot of work to put that together. Same thing, the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, along with House Bill 303, mandates the state of Delaware protect dependent and neglected youth. Children and juveniles that we have contact with, we make sure we have proper separation between adults and juveniles in our facility, and we had 100% compliance on that, and we passed off on that. The Victims' Bill of Rights compliance reports was submitted, and we passed off on that, no issues or concerns. Every time we have a victim, we make sure they get the proper paperwork and the resources to help them out, and we have to show that we do that. Some public safety solutions that we're working on this year so far, is, and we talked about in December, was with frontline application modules that will have been rolled out, and they do body-worn camera audits, employee evaluations, training tracker, training mandates, FTO daily observation reports like we do with the dispatchers. We track conduct, wellness. And that's something else let me bring up. The wellness part is tracking the officers' mental health, physical health, and all that is so important. And unfortunately, we did just lose an officer to suicide this week in Delaware, and that's not the first one this year. So it is a real thing, so we always want to look out for our 911 employees as well as our police officers. So we're doing all those modules. That's really working well. Accreditation, we are moving forward on the accreditation with DPAC. Our current timeline is to host a mock assessment in early mid to November. Our final assessment will be December, so we should be fully accredited in that finally. Exxon cameras, we have in-car cameras, body-worn cameras like I have on now, as well as interview rooms. We're doing all the currently technology updates right now, so that's good. Flock safety, license plate recognition cameras, we've got them installed around town now. So that will help us with solving any crime as cars coming in and out. We're not actively monitoring them, but they will give us hits on wanted people or the cars anyway. But if you have a crime, what you can do is sit there and if somebody says that was a red Volkswagen, you can narrow it down to red Volkswagen, a time frame, and help us with that. By doing this, we actually have connection feeds to other flock cameras. So if Dewey Beach has them, Delaware State Police in their jurisdiction, you can search that way too. So it's all capable of each other and helping other departments out. So we're definitely just now getting on board, but a lot of other departments in our area has been doing it. Outreach, Assistant City Manager Evan Miller and I have been meeting monthly with Director of Camp, Kim Lacey. We'll talk about many different things. It's just another outreach that we're doing, but we're really starting to focus a little bit too on the Human Rights Equity Index score to see if we can't get that score up. And we're doing a lot of good things in town. We don't give ourselves credit all the time for it, so we want to make sure we get that out with the city manager's office. Some of the other things that's going on, March 27th, Bethany Beach Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Symposium will be taking place. I'll be going to represent Rehoboth Beach, and Clifton Hinderly will be sitting there visiting or helping out with that presentation from here in town. April 7th, there's a workshop meeting to discuss sea witch and parking coming up at your request, I believe, and I think we've got some good things that's coming with the parking solution on that, and Evan Miller's been a strong supporter and come up with a great idea on that, so more to come. April 10th, Chief Thomas Spell from Lewis PD and myself will be panelists in Lewis and talking about Speak Out Against Hate. And also, that's coming up April 10th. April 17th at 10:30 here in town at Rehoboth Library is the Resort Advisory Committee meeting, RAC. It's about dark transportation, Jolly Trolley, and things like that will be there. Usually the city manager's office and myself and Lynn Cohen is in town to sit down and represent us and see what's going on, and we'll post any issues we've had. April 26th, and you'll get more information on this as they come. April 26th, DEA Drug Take Back Day is going to be here in Rehoboth Beach. April 26th, the same day, we'll have officers out to the YMCA for Health Kids Day. And then on June 5th, we're hosting LGBTQ and RBPD event at Freddy's Restaurant, where we'll be just kind of meet and greet. I'm talking about hate crimes and things like that, and what we see in our community and in our area. Again, there's no concerns or anything like that. It's just more of outreach that we're just trying to be more proactive and be involved with our community.
What date is that, Chief?
That's going to be June 5th. And right now, it looks like it's going to be around 5 o'clock, 5 to 7, 5 to 8, but more will come out there, and it will be posted online, put invites. And that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Chief, I got to tell you, my office over in the first floor is right above the basement, and I listen to some of those seasonal officers kicking, punching, slapping, body slamming, and it comes right through the ceiling floor. I have a lot of respect for them. I would not want to encounter, not that I would, but I would not want to encounter them.
Well, if you feel bad about that, you should feel a little bit bad. A couple weeks ago, the full-time officers, and that includes all its older ones, so I have to do jiu-jitsu and all that training for requirements. So
Well,
it's a little
the
painful.
sound
That's the older you
translates
get.
right through the floor, so very good. Are there any other questions among the commissioners for the chief?
Mayor?
Commissioner Good?
Chief, thank you very much. Learned a lot from your presentation. Just an inquiry. I see you have one citation and one only for a dog at large. I wanted to know if you're able to share with us what part of the city that occurred in, and also how you feel between October 1st and April 30th, how dogs on the beach and boardwalk have gone. I personally, I'm on the boardwalk a lot and sometimes the beach, and there are a lot of dogs running loose. Fortunately, they're usually very beautiful, friendly dogs. They're not like, but I've just wanted your feedback on how you feel, and firstly, whether that dog at large was on the beach, boardwalk, or somewhere else.
I don't have the exact location, but I will make sure I go back this afternoon and give each of you an email to answer that.
Thank you.
And as far as how the dogs are going, yes, you're right. There's a lot of dogs off leash. We make a lot of contact. A lot of them are warnings and trying to educate them on what the law is. There's been more signage put out there. The reality is a lot of individuals we're making contact for are trying to advising us that they're service animals when we probably think they're not, but by law they don't have to have any credentials showing that. So we do ask them, we address it or whatever, and ask what service the animal provides. But that's really as far as we can go. We're at their mercy per se on their answers, and all. By law we can't keep pushing it, and we're seeing more and more responses like that as people become aware. That's sort of sad or whatever, because it takes away from the individuals that truly need a service animal. Again, that's not all of it, but that is a large proponent, more than I've ever seen the last 2 years of that stuff. As soon as you stop up, whoa, hold it, I've already been contacted before, this is a service animal. and you're kind
Or,
of stuck
sorry,
there.
are service animals allowed to be off leash? Just
Well, no, they're not at that. So we address that and get their leashes on them and all, but just when animals aren't supposed to be on the boardwalk or the beach or anywhere during the off seasons too, we're seeing a lot more of
okay.
that. So I'm
Thank
sorry, I
you.
should distinguish between the two. In the off season, yes, it's on there. Much we do sit there and tell them where you can do that, what areas the officers do, but it's probably we're going to have to start giving more citations out right now. A large majority that come through me, I see it in the complaint logs that they're just giving warnings to that they advised them. So I do see they're stopping now and making contact, but they're not necessarily giving citations. But I can pull the numbers if you need to know the numbers of contacts too, because we do track all that.
Oh, actually, I'm just the one dog at large. I'm curious whether the officers that happen to be on the beach, boardwalk, or just somewhere in the rest of the 1.2
I
square
will
miles.
get back with you on that right
Not
away.
urgent, but thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else? Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you, Chief, to you and all the officers that protect us so well during the season. Curious of end of the school year transition for SRO, how does that occur, or what is the new role for that individual?
Each year when the school gets done, that individual goes ahead on what's called a split shift, usually around 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. So they'll start doing a routine on A shift and B shift or whatever correspondence. So he's seeing that, and then we actually take another officer and we'll bring them to a split shift too. So we have an extra one on each shift per se at the heaviest times, the busiest times. So what we do is ask for a volunteer from somebody's shift to sit there and take that. So the school resource is automatically going to be one of them. The other one is volunteers if somebody wants to work one-to-one.
Thank you.
Chief, I know we, in the past, we have advertised Drug Take Back Day, where police department receives used drugs rather than promoting against people, flushing them in the toilet or whatever. But at the same time, over the years, we've also promoted that Drug Take Back is 365. Are you still doing that?
Correct. If someone can't get in there for those days, I will sit there and collect them. If they come in, and just leave them in dispatch, and dispatch will get to me, and I'll make sure they're in a secure place until we have the next take back program. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else up here? Any members of the public not listed on the agenda, but nope. Very good.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Chief. We appreciate it. With that, we'll move on to Board and Commission reports that are embedded in the agenda. That's for the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission. We have no committee reports. Our community partner reports, we have 4 embedded in the agenda from the Cape and Lopin Senior Center, Chamber of Commerce, Main Street, and Public Library. Again, I mentioned earlier, you have the Alderman Court, Building and Licensing, Communication, and the General Police Report. I just want to make a note and emphasize that we thank all these agencies. These reports take a while to collate and create and develop, and we are very appreciative of everybody, including our community partners, for creating them, and our Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission. The Parks and Shade Tree is not consistent yet in giving us some, but I think that a lot occurs because they're not meeting regularly either. So I'll double check with them. With that, we're going to go to old business, and that is consider adoption of city budget for the fiscal year April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. Taylor?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you. Good afternoon. So today I wanted to give a little bit of a view of our budget process this year for the fiscal year 26 budget. So in my previous positions, specifically, I've always worked to create and support accurate budgets, and this year was no exception. The dozens of elected officials that I've worked with over the years have always valued accuracy, and that's exactly what our team has brought this year. I would like to give immense thanks to our budget team, which consisted of Jennifer Goodman, our staff accountant, Burke Bert Dukes, our finance director, and then, of course, Evan Miller, our assistant city manager, and then our department directors and department heads who initially created their budget requests. So I did want to extend sincere thanks to them. Through forecasting and the use of identification of potential strengths and weaknesses in our current and upcoming budget years, we really were able to make this a not overly conservative, but also not overly aggressive budget approach, and it's a just right approach. And we'll continue in the future to utilize that mentality through forecasting and tracking. And it also lends to additional accuracy, leading to success communicating our budget to members of the public and the community. So we will move to the next slide. What has changed in our budget process since last year? This year we worked to accurately predict the surplus. As you can see, it did not fluctuate dramatically from meeting to meeting, and so we used forecasting to be able to do that based on our actuals and looking at what we were actually accomplishing on our capital projects. We are working toward creating a 3-year forecast of operational budgeting for next year, and that'll be similar to our 5-year capital budget plan, and so we'll be able to rely on that as a financial roadmap moving forward. And
Mr. Tedder, may I just, before you,
Let me recognize you, Commissioner
Sorry.
Good.
Mayor, Mr. Tedder, as you know, I had personal responsibilities that took me to the West Coast last week. So I wasn't present for the last of the, I guess, 4 whatever budget meetings. Not that I think it would have made a difference because of the way the votes went. I would have been in the minority or anyway. I am very concerned about the statements you've made. I believe this budget has no significant attempt to limit expense growth, and it's balanced with that $5.5 million loan we took out. And of course, it means there's increased debt service inherently within the budget. But I think the public should know that, there are different opinions. But I personally, I can't be certain what I'm going to do, but I will likely have to vote against this budget, and I think it has been almost a travesty the way it has been presented as something that it is not. Because as the public knows, and I wasn't in office when the lifeguard station, which is a gorgeous lifeguard station, I think it even has showers, and we have a lot of female guards, maybe even 55, 60%. It's fine. It's apparently the only lifeguard station as big as ours is in San Diego, but whatever, it's ours. That was supposed to have been financed with revenue over a 2-year period. Originally, the cost was $4.9 million. It ballooned, unfortunately, to $5.5 million with overcharges, whatever. So that would have been $3 million in 1 year and $2.5 million in another year. And that could have been done, but we've grown things like salaries, benefits, new positions, which I'll talk about later. And because I want to eliminate one of them permanently because the person has recently left. Which was a new position as of October 2023, the Director of Community Development. So I just want to put it out there that we can say that it's structurally balanced because you can get the spreadsheet to balance, but it's grown by almost 60% in 4 fiscal years, which is almost 3 times the rate of inflation in goods and services as measured by the Consumer Price Index. So I have been speaking to you and to Mr. Dukes to no avail, and I feel the public should be concerned about the message here, that we're like almost congratulating ourselves for a balanced budget, which is in no way balanced in my view.
Thank you, Suzanne. Taylor, go ahead and continue.
thank you. With our rapidly approaching year end, we do have very accurate actuals for our fiscal year 25 forecast that we have continued to refine as the budget process has moved along. So I would like to show you the comparison between our forecast for where we're landing this year, our proposed fiscal year 26 budget, which will begin April 1st, and then our forecast for fiscal year 27. As you can see, we do have a healthy surplus of $6.3 million for this fiscal year, and then next year we are budgeting about $222,000 of a surplus. And the difference between these figures, that forecast, those are actuals, and based on what we have purchase orders for through the end of the year. People are not entering anymore. So that is an actual number. And I will say this is a little bit skewed because of the beach patrol facility. So we do have $2.48 million of the loan proceeds recognized in the proposed 26 budget. So that's why that number is going up. And the expenditures on fiscal year 25, we have not, of course, spent the full amount on the beach patrol facility. And I would like to note that this is total budget. So this is the general fund, the enterprise fund, so water, wastewater. Those operate more like a business, not quite, but very similarly. So in the fiscal year 26 budget, it's $23.8 million as our general fund, which is our operating fund, which is primarily staff and other operating expenditures. $4.4 million general fund capital budget, and then the remainder is the utilities. So first, I did want to provide a highlight on the Delaware League of Local Governments Hill Day. This was held on March 12th. That's where elected officials are invited to go to Capitol Hill to talk to their legislators. We did have 2 commissioners attend that, Commissioner Gossett and Commissioner Thier. And so they provided me these great updates and ideas, things to talk about, learn about, know about. So there are federal funding reductions that are taking place, and it's unclear really what the depth of that is, but of course the federal government is downsizing employees, but that also includes contractors and federal funding, so we could be affected potentially through DEL-DOT funding because they receive federal funding, things of that nature. And then they are eliminating leases as well, which could have indirect effects. And there is elimination of funding and no new funding for the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, and then anyone that has not we've used all of our ARPA funds, but remaining ARPA funds are at risk. So I think our main impact to Rehoboth Beach is on our beach replenishment, because that is a huge federal cost share and state cost share. So if that is pushed down to the local level, it will be much more concerning for us, because we'll have to figure out how to budget for that in the future, because we have to take care of our best asset. And then the drinking water fund, we are making major improvements to our treatment facilities for the forever chemicals, PFAS, PFOA, and that could limit our grant funding opportunities in the future for that as well. Another item I wanted to mention is congressional earmarks. Over $90 million is allocated to Delaware. That's gone. Rehoboth Beach does not have direct earmarks, but again, we could be indirectly affected through state funds or even county funds, because they receive state funds, et cetera, which comes from the federal government. And the proposed elimination of the tax deduction for municipal bonds, we do have 2. One is it's held from Chase Bank, and then the other is M&T Bank, so I don't think those will be immediately affected, but it could affect our ability for bonding in the future if it's no longer desirable to purchase municipal bonds, because you wouldn't get the tax deduction. And then, of course, other offices are closing. But I will go ahead and turn to the commissioners that attended if you have anything else to add to that, but I just wanted to highlight those things that could affect our budget in the future.
Commissioner Thier?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so the message, I think, as Mr. Tedder has gone through these 2 slides, I think the message is kind of twofold. One is they're expecting cuts, right? I think we hear every day on the news that cuts are being made, so they are expecting cuts. At this point, they know what some of those cuts are, some of the cuts they don't know. I think as Mr. Tedder said, Directly, I think the biggest risk we have is beach replenishment. My understanding, and I'm just looking at a document here, with the most recent beach replenishment, our portion, again, Rehoboth Beach's portion was $4.6 million, right? And that was funded by the federal government and the state government. As we know, we've heard recently that the state wants to cut back on their contribution. If the federal funding goes away, I mean, we could be on the hook for, several $1,000,000. I don't know how frequently we do the beach replenishment. But the point is that's probably where we have our biggest exposure. And as Mr. Tedder said, indirectly, whether it be DelDOT or other state agencies that get federal funding and then do projects around town, those could be cut back as well. I think the way we have to look at this is we're probably not going to know until the next year's federal budget is completed, which will be sometime later this year, exactly how it's going to affect us. So I think, we do need to be cautious going forward, as we make decisions on what money to spend. Patrick? Commissioner Gossett, sorry.
Thank you. Just to reflect on those same things and conversations, actually yesterday at a luncheon with Lisa Blunt Rochester, we had a very in-depth conversation about beach funding and replenishment. And obviously, it's not Rehoboth alone. It's multiple communities along the seashore here. And as mentioned, that split is 65-35, feds and then state. So there is, strong discussion that both of those may disappear. I think it's, Mary, you may help me on this, is about 3 years that the replenishment occurs, every 3 years. And that,
Provided we need the sand.
Correct.
Right? There's a caveat there, yeah.
right, which I don't think we've ever missed a time that we haven't needed the same.
Actually, the first time.
First time? Okay. But anyway, that is a strong question in many people's minds, and it is on the top of the list of Congressman Lisa Blunt Rochester of gathering all of the communities together along the seashore in order to approach and address that issue. One of the things also that was very strongly discussed at the meeting in Washington this week was the fact to call your local call your congressmen and call your senators, and the fact that the aspect of if something is going wrong, that's an issue, but when something is going right, or you're occurring, or you're happy with what their representation on the Hill is going, to call their staff and or email their staff, or go to their website to respond to them, just to give them support, because it's a very tough time in Washington on both sides of the aisle, and anything that you can do to either add support or your comments or share exact stories that have impacted you in your financial aspects, either good or bad, that also helps them to tell the story and share the story and move the issues forward. So again, to call your congressmen and senators is a very important aspect. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Taylor, go ahead.
Great. So as you know, we've had 4 budget meetings prior to this, and I'm not going to go through all of these changes because we've went through them before, but we have the changes from the first meeting to the second on this slide, but I will focus on the changes from meeting 4 to now. So we did update the fire company's contribution per your direction to $250,000. That's up from $200 last year. We did add an $80,000 expense for reconfiguration of office space and cubicles here at City Hall. Ultimately, when City Hall was built, that 3rd floor was unfinished, and now it's all built out, and we still do not have enough room, so this would allow us to accommodate future needs. We've added $42,000 to the parking department for the license plate recognition equipment replacement. We've learned that equipment on one of the vehicles has reached its end of life cycle. It's unsupported. So we will replace this one this year, and then we'll have to replace another one next year. And we added $150,000 to the water capital budget for well 6 relocation. This is the well that's near the BB Abysinio campus near Route 24 on Warrington Road. When recent development there, the Arbor Lynn subdivision, and then BB's campus were built, there were some restrictions related to being near a stormwater basin that restrict where we can put our new well that was planned. So this would shift it a little further, and so that's what that expense is.
Mayor, may I ask
Is
about?
Are you finished?
Sure.
As you know,
You're good?
Mr. Tedder, I appreciate the update. I'm fine with the fire company, the parking software, or maybe, or it's hardware, and the water is absolutely, critical. I have a big problem with the kitting out future office space for the following reason. We have an opportunity to eliminate that new position that was created, I think, with the budget in March of 2023, and that was filled in October 2023 by someone who has left. And in the view in my view, and in the view of many other people, the person filling that role who has now left was not streamlining building and licensing in the way that we had hoped. And in fact, you, Mr. Miller, Mr. Janus, and Mr. Schenko, I believe, are capable of doing a great job with that. And that role, that obviates having that director of community development who was also head of the building and licensing. So that's a start. But I think, especially in light of what, I'm really glad that 2 commissioners went to Capitol Hill. We have to assume we're going to be responsible for some beach replenishment. We could have some Pollyannas up here who think, we'll get that all, paid for as it has been in the past. So I want to be proactive. And given that I believe we desperately need a hiring freeze with some exceptions, streets, water, wastewater, parks, and certain departments that are non-discretionary, like the wastewater treatment plant, that's different. But a hiring freeze in administration, that would mean spending $80,000 now to continue to create more office space, to me, is a terrible idea. One of the problems with administrators, in my view, in City Hall, the last, 3 to 5 years that I'm more familiar with it, administrators sort of beget more regulations. And once they have more regulations and programs, they tend to require more administrators like under them or alongside them working. We've had a propensity in this town for administrators to say, well, I'm so busy, I can't handle this task, I need to hire a consultant. That's what's happened lately. We have had a $47,000 consultant that even some on this board kept saying, I wish we could do it without the consultant. Well, the consultant started working, I believe, a month ago and did a little PowerPoint. And honestly, 2 members of that task force told me personally that they didn't need that consultant. These are real estate people and attorneys who said they didn't need the consultant. So I would like to see that done. And because of it, I wonder if I would like to make a motion to postpone by 1 year that $80,000 to administration for additional office space and relocation. Do I have a second on that? Unfortunately, Mr. Shanowski is not here because so we don't have a second on that. Okay, a more general problem I have with this, with this approach. As all of you know, I felt that we should have stayed at 90% health coverage for non-union, in other words, not the police. Now, you all passed it at 100% in spite of, at one point, there was a compromise for it to be 90% for administrative higher paid employees and like department supervisors, and 100% for those earning approximately $60,000 and below, although it was done by categories in a second round. Those benefits are very difficult to take back. Like, we're gonna be at 100% health coverage forevermore in administration. That's sort of a fair guess. And although I know you cherry-picked, in my view, a lot of data, like you kept telling us how well Lewis and Dewey Beach have 100%. There were other towns nearby that did not have 100%. I presented Bureau of Labor Statistics data where they had spoken with municipal governments all across the country. The average was 86% for the employer, the city or the town, to pay. Because we're now at 100% health insurance for everyone, it's even more critical not to continue to add more positions, because benefits in the form of health insurance, 401k matching, are like 30,000 per employee, and an employee with dependents, it approaches 40,000. So for all these reasons, now that we probably will never be able to take back that 100%, I won't belabor it, but, you know, comparing ourselves to Lewis and Dewey, look at the salary of the city manager in Lewis or Dewey, or Lewis and Dewey pay less, so the employees there aren't, you know, they're not going to so they would rather work here, in my view, if they could, for a higher salary, even if the health insurance were only covered at 90% by the city. So I think it's time to think about being really careful and conservative, because we may face these beach replenishment costs, which are staggering. Mr. Tedder, you even agree with me. It could be as much as $1 million to stabilize that retaining wall behind the dock. And we have no choice, because the ocean outfall pipe and a sewer lateral running from Henlope and Acres to our plant for treatment, and then for actually being run back through the ocean outfall pipe once it's effluent and it's treated. We have to, the dock and the retaining wall has to be stabilized. We have no choice. So you look at that. Let's say that's $1 million for beach replenishment. This is not the time, in my view. In fact, I was very disappointed. I don't think we should be hiring a fourth IT person. We've promoted one person. We have a staff of 3. Because at this point, we're looking for a new network administrator. I believe that person, in supervising the newly promoted Brandt, was newly promoted. And you're saying you need a new person as a tech assistant to replace Brandt. I would hope we could reconsider that. But let's, you know, does anyone possibly want to reconsider on refitting all these offices at a cost of $80,000 and deferring that for a year?
Mayor, if I could, please.
Commissioners there?
Thank you, Mayor. So I did have a detailed conversation with Mr. Tedder about the $80,000 a couple of years ago. Sorry, a couple of days ago. It does, you know, now 52 minutes into the meeting, it does feel like a couple of years ago. Having said that, you know, this is, you know, planning for, since and I'll just be very specific, so I hope you don't mind.
Sure.
So we still haven't decided what we're going to do with the solicitor yet, whether we're going to hire somebody internally, hire somebody externally. As Commissioner Good has mentioned or has identified, you know, we do have a vacancy with a director of planning and community development, if I have that title correct. Correct. So there are, you know, some things proverbially up in the air, okay? And he is looking forward, potentially planning to relocate some people around, depending on what happens. I'm comfortable with having this in the budget. I'll say overall with this budget, I think, as Mr. Tedder mentioned in his first few slides, one of my objectives this year, and it was clearly one of Mr. Tedder's objectives this year, was to really kind of overhaul the budgeting process. So we've done a comprehensive current year reforecast, FY25 reforecast. Mr. Tedder mentioned the benefits of doing that. We've got a 26 budget. We've got projections for 27, and you'll see some slides. We actually go out past 27. Mr. Tedder comes from Boulder City, where they did a 5-year plan. He's looking to get to 3 years next year. 3 years would be fantastic. Do I think this budget is perfect? No. But do I think we've come a long ways from where we have been over the past few years? Absolutely. Do I agree with everything in this budget? No. Do I think there's areas where we can probably reduce some expenses through efficiency, through technology? Yeah. Are we going to get there? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm okay with the 80K. The only thing, you know, and we talked about this the other day, I think this is, if you decide to move forward, just come back to the mayor and commissioners, just update us, let us know what you're going to do so that we're all in the know.
Of course.
Okay. And as far as the community planning and development position, as Commissioner Good mentioned, Mr. Christian, the former city manager, created that position because, and again, I don't think I want to get into the details here, but, things were falling behind in that department for whatever reason. So he created that position to hopefully improve the processes in that department. Mr. Tedder wants to take the opportunity to assess that department, develop some, thoughts on how we move forward with that department. So he's looking to keep those monies in the budget for now, and I fully support that. I've talked over some of the previous meetings about, again, missing deadlines. So let's make sure that we can, improve that department. I don't want to use the term fix the department. I think that's the wrong word. Let's make sure we can improve the department, and let's support Mr. Tedder in his assessment and analysis of that department and coming up with a path forward. So again, I support keeping that in the budget. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor?
I'd like to comment.
Go ahead, sorry.
I want to remind everybody, I'll speak for myself, that I was in attendance at the last meeting. In fact, I attended all four of four budget meetings. And that was my choice not to go away and be with family and miss meetings. I will say that I'm not particularly interested in redebating, and I'm unswayed by anything, Commissioner Good, that you have said today. And so that's why I am generally silent on responding to you. I hate redebating everything in extra time. Now,
Mr.
now
Mayor,
you may go.
thank you. May I clarify? I want to clarify something Commissioner Tier said, but I would like.
Commissioner Good, it's Thier.
no, it's
Thier,
Tier.
not
I'm
Tier.
sorry.
It's Thier. Dear Thier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will, following this, I would like to make a motion to eliminate that Director of Community Development position, which was filled from October 2023 until mid-March, when the person in that role was, had his or her last day. But I'm asking you, you're not in favor of deferring spending $80,000 to get ready for additional employees, which, fine, it's only $80,000. That is a minor amount of money. In fact, it's even, it's less than the $47,000 consultancy. I mean, it's more than the $47,000 consultancy, but it's a lot less than a lot of other things, of several consultancies. But my issue now is, given that the benefits are up for any new employee, because we're now at 100% health coverage, which is difficult to take back. I believe it will
Excuse
be
me, Mayor.
in perpetuity. I am concerned, even though the offices are leaving, I feel like we're leaving it in limbo that Mr. Tedder will make a determination. I looked at the website yesterday. There were only 3 jobs advertised. There was not yet this Director of Community Development on there. But I'd like to make a motion that we take a break from having that person. The feedback about her contribution was almost uniformly negative. It seemed to be almost like an extra layer of bureaucracy. She demanded a consultant for one of the tasks that most of us thought she should have been able to handle. That's why we were paying her, not to have her spend $47,000 on a consultant who did a PowerPoint the other week, and we'll do another one next week. So I would like to make a motion that, given the problems we had with that not increasing the efficiency of building and licensing, that we eliminate that new position, not allow it to be re-advertised. May I have some support on that?
No.
Okay, I have another motion, which is a totally separate topic. And Commissioner Markert, you actually were the one who suggested this. Given that we're lauding ourselves for having a surplus, which I believe we don't have, but let's assume we have it, we might as well spend. Commissioner Markert suggested at either the February 10th or February 21st budget meeting that we roll back the property tax hike that went into effect with the taxes that were due on August 31st, 2024. It was either a 28 or 29% hike. it netted the city an extra $592,000, and at its current level,
Commissioner,
so I will make a motion.
The discussion of taxes and property taxes will be on the mayor.
It's in the
June.
presentation, and it's also at the June meeting, Mayor.
Yeah, well,
But isn't it shouldn't be
I
part
want
of
to
the
defer
budget?
that conversation until we can advertise it specifically in an agenda.
In
And
June.
so now is not the right time to
Okay,
to
well, let
talk
me
about
just
it.
say
So
that
go on to the next
Commissioner
topic.
Markert seemed in favor of that. I believe it's the right thing to do for property owners, and
We just said we're deferring
I-
that conversation, Suzanne.
One last
You do not
topic.
have the floor
Okay.
when it comes to taxes. I'm not curbing anybody for future discussion of this. It will be on an agenda, but it will be separate. Do you have anything else that you want to bring forward?
I do have one last topic. I think it's germane to a budget, very germane. I haven't gotten all of the numbers from Mr. Tedder, but I appreciate he's been very responsive. I mean, he's very responsive, and I will say he's an excellent writer in his correspondence with me, and I presume with others. Yes, I was just chastised for helping my son and daughter-in-law with their 3 children, ages 4 and under, and a dog out in California because my son had a business trip to the East Coast. So, okay, I did make a decision that it was more important for my son, who's a software engineer for a big tech company, to help him than to be here last week. I watched the meetings. My topic now is the way we are paying this stormwater consultant. I listened to her presentation. I was not in Delaware, but I listened to her video. There were a lot of misrepresentations in what she said because she's a consultant who's looking for her company, ACOM, to make money forevermore from this city, doing assessments of which house is this has this much pervious space, impervious. I would like to look toward using this surplus that you're citing to put money aside for stormwater upgrades and repairs, which are necessary infrastructure repairs, for the following reason. Under City Manager Sharon Lynn, there was I had a lot of respect for her, a very smart woman. She put forth plans for which streets, which water mains, which sewer laterals on a schedule, she even had maps, should be replaced so that we kept things current, so we didn't have like water pipes bursting because they dated from 1975, and she did it like in a first in, first out type order, like logically. I believe we should do the same thing with stormwater. We already spent the money in 2021 for the Columbia, Maryland engineering firm to scope out the pipes. Like I believe Bayard might be the one in the most critical, disastrous shape, Bayard Avenue, I believe that's the one. So if we could put some of this surplus into an account, the consultant, as you told me, for fiscal year 2025, which ends on March 31st in like 10 days, they were allocated $140,000 in fees, including like some travel from Gaithersburg, Maryland, and all of their expenses. They didn't happen to spend a lot of it because it just got delayed. So I would like to remove the stormwater consultancy fees from the fiscal year 2026 budget. Just let the consultant, I'm resigned to that, let them spend the rest of the money that's allocated but they didn't spend. And in the August election, I believe there should be a referendum question to the property owners. Do you think it's reasonable for you to have a separate stormwater impact fee as part of your refuse, water, wastewater bills? There are a couple other problems with stormwater impact fees. Let me just go through it. If you have a house, most of your stormwater is absorbed in the yard around your house versus a business. There's no pervious grass around it. It's a very different situation. Most property owners are absorbing most of their own stormwater. Secondly, there's a problem with the IRS. Now, of course, under this new president, anything could change, but let's assume those who are doing a Schedule E, rental property owners, and Schedule C, like business owners, you own a boutique, they can deduct the cost of the stormwater impact fee, which is good, fine. But residents like most of us ourselves, we can't unless, even if we itemize, we can't deduct impact fees the way
Mayor,
we
are
can
on-
deduct property
Are we on
taxes.
topic or are we off topic?
I would like to-
Suzanne, this is not the place to debate the stormwater utility tax.
Okay, to
force.
sum up,
If you have
just-
a motion to
just
remove
my-
the
to sum
funding-
up, I would
Are
like-
you going to let me finish? If you have something about the budget and removing funds or transferring funds or something, that's appropriate.
And we do have that on a
I do.
slide later.
What I have, I would like to make a motion that we remove the ACOM consultancy from fiscal year 2026. Limit their spending on behalf of Rehoboth Beach to what didn't get spent of the $140,000 that they got that's effective through March 31st, 2025. Do I have a second on that, and give us time to consider whether this is the best way to raise about $1 million a year to fix our stormwater? Do I have a second on not paying ACOM even more than $140,000 the way we spent last year? Because I believe is that correct, Mr. Cheddar? It's $100,000 you've put in for them from April 1st, 2025 until March 31st, 2026. Does that sound right?
Sounds right, yeah.
And in addition, we had a stormwater management plan, and which cost another $100,000. But thankfully, Mr. Tedder, to his credit, got a $50,000 grant, so it only cost us $50,000. So would anyone else be in favor? This would slow it down so residents could have a chance to consider whether this is a ridiculous way to collect the money, because there are 10 other better ways to collect it, but I know the mayor won't indulge me to let me explain those, or whether, I think the property owners are very educated people who can make a decision on whether a stormwater impact fee for a small town makes any sense.
Suzanne, you've suggested a motion. Now you need to take a breather, please, to get a response. Is there anybody that's interested in seconding her? I don't even remember what it was.
Well, to not spend any more money on ACOM in fiscal year 2026. There's already money left from last year for them.
He has the floor. We didn't come to this meeting to hear this kind of stuff.
Well, this is part of it, Walter,
But
unfortunately.
you give some people 20 minutes and we're allowed 3 minutes at the most.
That's right. That's
And
right.
it's wrong. We understand, but the man has the floor.
Thank you. Suzanne, let's you're not getting any response, so let's go back to Taylor, if you would continue, please.
Sure. So this is the first of a series of line charts that we've prepared for you to kind of give you a little more insight into the different pieces that make up those total budget figures that we showed you on, I think, the third or fourth slide of this presentation. So this is the general fund operating expenses. So if you look, fiscal year 24, the budgeted amount was about 17.8 million. For fiscal year 25 is budgeted at 20.4 million. The actuals are 18.9. And then fiscal year 26, 23.8. And so why the increase? So we have increased debt service. The payment for the beach patrol facility is about $900,000 a year. The contribution for the fire company did increase $50,000. Police salaries increased about $550,000 per their collective bargaining agreement so that we could remain competitive and continue having a high quality police force. Our part-time salaries increased about $200,000 for beach patrol employees because we also need them very badly and want to make sure we're paying them appropriately. And then our parking meter processing fees has an increase of $275,000, and that is also recognized on the revenue side. So there is an offset to that, but it's just because more people are using the pay-by-phone option. And then employee COLA, cost of living and merit increases is $155,000. And then we also did have an increase in budgeted legal fees for administration and the Planning Commission of $75,000 total. So that's primarily the increase on this. So on the next slide, we have the general fund capital budget, which as you can see, it looks a little bit like a roller coaster. So when we do large projects, it goes up, and when we do not, it goes down, of course. So in fiscal year 21, where you see it's at about $4 million, we had parking meter purchases, Lake Avenue Phase 2 project. We had improvements to City Hall and storm sewer improvements, which currently are paid out of the general fund capital budget. Fiscal year 25, you see a big spike to 5.3. We had part of the beach patrol facility related in that as an expense. And in fiscal year 28, we have a lot of stormwater projects planned, and streetscape is also budgeted in that for making up that $5.9 million in fiscal year 28. So on water fund, this one actually remains fairly flat. So it hovers around between 2.3 and 2.7 million, just depending on the actual operating expenses. So water fund CIP, traditionally, this one is fairly flat as well, ranging between $1 million and $1.5 million. But in fiscal year 27, we are planning on the filter media tanks and piping for PFAS treatment and removal. Those are the forever chemicals that we will have to remove for new EPA standards to make sure we continue to offer high-quality drinking water. And with our wastewater fund operating expenses, so we do have increases in chemicals for treatment, sludge hauling, disposal, and other professional services like the divers for the outfall inspections, maintenance contracts for calibrations, repairs, and maintenance on the plant equipment, and then, of course, debt service on wastewater operating expenses. So the actuals range between 5.5 and, well, about 5 million and 6.4 million. So those do remain fairly steady. In the wastewater fund capital budget, so fiscal year 21, you see us starting out at 1.3 million. That's where we had some sewer line rehab. But in fiscal year 23, you see an increase. That was a state road pump station reconstruction. And then in fiscal year 24, we had the continuation of that project and began the Phase 3B design for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. In fiscal year 25, we had the continuation of Phase 3B design and construction. And then 26, we'll have the final construction of Phase 3B and the start of Phase 4. And in 27, we'll complete the Phase 4 construction. And then you see it drop off because all of the improvements will finally be completed at the treatment plant. So wastewater debt service, we wanted to talk about this because the city got a $12 million loan from DENREC in 2018, and it's a line of credit. So you see this kind of going up and down and up and down. So as we draw down that line of credit, our debt goes up, but we're also paying off the other debt. So this note will be fully drawn next year. So after that, you'll see our debt related to wastewater gradually decline and not continue to go up. And our debt on the wastewater section of the enterprise fund represents 70.5% of our total city debt. So that's $48 million. And wastewater operating and maintenance and capital shared costs. So this is a stacked bar chart that shows the distribution of our shared costs with the county and our other partners it consists of North Shores, Henlopen Acres, Dewey Beach, and ourselves. So we don't pay all of the costs for both the debt and the operating and maintenance on our wastewater plant. Our capital costs financed with debt, we pay 58% of that. And as you can see here, our costs for Rehoboth Beach have ranged from most recently only 23% and have ranged as high as 50%.
Mr. Mayor?
Mayor, if I could, please. Commissioner Good can go first.
Commissioner Good and then Commissioner Thier.
Thank you. Would you just clarify, because I know, of course, the outfall initially, because flows at the time were what they thought they would continue to be, that we paid 58%, and the county only paid 42%. And that was agreed to, I believe, in 2018, I saw, sign. Are you saying there have been times of late when downtown Rehoboth Beach only represents 23% of the flow to the plant, and then that would mean, obviously, that would be 77% would be from outside city limits?
So on this chart, this is the operating maintenance and capital shared costs. So this is costs, not necessarily flows, but yes, our flow has gone to a lesser percentage. I think Henry can remind me, it's 40 to 42%.
Right, those are the figures I've heard, that it's, instead of being 58% Rehoboth and 42% outside, it's more like 50-50, or even, even lower than 50. But it's the 23% did not reflect that there have been times on a Wednesday in January when downtown Rehoboth is now only representing 23% of what's processed at our plant and then sent as treated effluent to the outfall. That's not the case?
So this is strictly costs. So that we paid 23% of the operation last year.
Well, that's great.
Pretty good deal.
Yeah, that's a great deal compared to, unfortunately, when we signed on for the outfall, we didn't protect ourselves, and we didn't maybe foresee that the Rehoboth Beach flow would decline relative to the outside, the other people outside whom we service. Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that.
If I could.
There.
Thank you, Mayor. So could you go back one slide for me,
Yeah.
Mr. Tanner? So actually, the other direction, the other back.
Which way?
The other way, back to this slide.
Oh, sure.
Thanks. So there have been, during this budget cycle and out of this budget cycle, there have been references to the growing of expenses in this budget. I think earlier in this session, there was a reference of the budget growing by, 60% over the last 4 years. I think it's important that everyone kind of keeps things in perspective, and that perspective is, where are some of those costs coming from? And I think this slide, this is really an excellent slide to make my point, which is in 22, our capital costs for the wastewater plant, which was related to upgrades of that plant, was $1 million. We're seeing that it's going to peak in 27 at $6 million, right? And then in 28, it's going to drop off a little bit to, well, that's actually a little over 6 million. It's going to drop to about 6 million. And then in 29, when we're done with all these upgrades, we literally go to zero. So if we would go back to that first slide and we look at that number, which is $43 million, one of the big drivers of our overall budget going up 60% is our investment in wastewater. Now, let's keep in mind, if you want to go to the next slide for me too, please, the one before this one, the one with the bar chart.
I think it was after that one.
That was after that one.
Almost there.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go back to the one where we looked at wastewater operating. When you look at the water expenses, it's flat, right? And there's a reason why that's flat. And we almost have to look at that as a non-controllable cost. The water department does one thing. They pump water, they get it ready, and they serve it to us. Whatever it's going to cost to do that, that's what it's going to cost, right? We deliver water to Dewey, we deliver water to some other places, we get revenue that offsets those costs. But you almost have to look at that as almost a non-controllable cost. That doesn't mean that, maybe there aren't opportunities to reduce costs, gets more efficient in the water department, whatever it may be. Wastewater is very similar, right? It is, we're providing a service, we're treating effluent, and we're pumping it out to the ocean, okay? So again, something that is generally kind of non-controllable. Whatever comes in, we got to treat it, we got to send it out. The point of this slide is for everyone to kind of keep in mind that, again, when you look at that $43 million, that's includes our total wastewater expense. We get revenue that offsets a large portion of that wastewater expense. So as Mr. Tedder has shown in the percentages here, as the flows have increased from the county, most recently West Rehoboth, our share goes down. So again, when you look at that 43 million, yes, our total budget's 43 million, but there are shared costs in there that are offset in revenue. So I just want to point out that yes, our overall budget has gone up by 60%, but there are drivers that have taken that up to 43 million. And by the way, when we get to 29, we're going to drop from 6 million down to 0. One last point of clarification on wastewater. So 2 things, just so there's no confusion here, we get paid 2 ways by the county. Debt service, they pay 42% of debt service. We actually end up getting more than 42% because North Shores is not part of that. So we get additional debt service money from North Shores. I'm looking to Mr. Miller. Correct me if my statement there is incorrect.
No, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Operations and maintenance, which is everything other than debt service, okay, is split proportionally. So whatever your percentage of flows are, you get that percentage of cost. We also are, per our contracts, we charge our partners an administrative fee. I think most of those admin fees are 15%, so we charge cost plus 15%. So just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good enough. Patrick, I think you were next. Bunky?
I just had one small detail. When we're talking about personnel costs, in particular with regard to the increases in healthcare costs, there's a slice of that in this.
Correct.
You know, okay,
Correct.
it's not maybe substantial, but it's in there, and you know that. So, only thing I'm trying to say is, if it don't necessarily characterize those increases as being this one little, one little bucket. The bucket, it's sort of in everything, and it's dealt with in this way. So kind of, I would say it diminishes that impact a little bit, dilutes it a little bit. I'm
Mayor.
sticking with a water analogy. Okay.
Patrick,
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow along to Commissioner Thier's comment about payment from the county, that's 42%. So we, although it is our debt and we're on the loan papers, if you will, we have a guaranteed payment from the county of at least, I think it's around 20 million against that debt. So almost half of the debt, we're assured of a payment. It doesn't come from elsewhere. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I was going to get into that on the
Okay,
next
sorry.
slide.
Don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could, Mayor, right, and I'm probably going to steal what Mr. Tedder is going to say, but thank you for bringing up Commissioner Gossett. Look, we own the water department, we own the water facility, we own the wastewater facility. So unfortunately, because we're the owners, we're the ones that have to take the debt out. And this is really kind of back to the point that I said earlier, right? There's $48 million in wastewater debt. As Commissioner Gossett just made the point, we have agreements in place where portions of that debt is paid for by the county and by North Shores. So do I like that, the debt goes, on our books, on our balance sheet, and goes against our debt limit? No, I don't like it, but unfortunately, that's the reality. So, thank you.
Taylor?
All right, so our next slide is our outstanding debt, which totals $67.8 million. However, when you look at the descriptions of these first 5, we are only responsible for 58% of the portion for those. So you'll also see that we have the JP Morgan Chase, that's, I believe, City Hall, and one other, the Lynchwell, yes, and then the Beach Patrol facility. So, 70.5% of our debt is cost shared, and we have guaranteed revenue from that. So I did want to get into stormwater expenses a little bit. So in fiscal year 28, you see that go way up, and that's because we do have planned improvements to Basin 40. That's in the area of Kent, Sussex, and Dover, really that general area, and Bayard Avenue. So that is one of the two of the planned projects, but I just wanted to talk about that now. Primarily, in the past, we've only funded stormwater expenses through general fund, and so that's, of course, a decision of the Board of Commissioners, how you want to move forward on that. So first, I just wanted to go over some specific considerations from this budget. So, our strengths, we do have a healthy fund balance and net position, which is also governed through our net position and fund balance policy. We have a healthy surplus this year. Another consideration, we do have a lot of new commercial construction on the horizon, especially with the two major hotel redevelopments right at the end of Rehoboth Avenue. We have not accounted for that in this budget because we're still unsure on timing and potential economic slowdowns, things of that nature, but there will be major building fees coming in the future. So that's another opportunity for us. We will be continuing to analyze revenue sources, specifically with the parking season. We have that scheduled coming up to talk about again. That would be for the 2026 parking season, so we'll be discussing that soon. And then we do have a significant reduction in the CIP starting in 29 because a lot of these major projects, specifically with wastewater, are finishing up. Some of our weaknesses, as we talked about before from the Hill Day slides, potential for economic slowdown. That could, of course, hurt us being such a seasonal tourism-based community. Beach replenishment, as we discussed earlier. The stormwater utility implementation, when do we do that? If we do that, that will have an impact. And then, of course, the PFAS treatment. We do have the planned use of water net position in 27 at this point. But right now, we're just looking at 26 today.
Commissioner Good?
Mr. Tedder, I really appreciate the effort, and I know other commissioners have also been involved in trying to predict the future. But like a lot of people who've seen, there are always unexpected expenses. So I'd like at least for you to address the fact, well, I'll give one example. Our wastewater treatment plant right now uses secondary treatment. In other words, it's better than like primary, but there's more state-of-the-art would be tertiary treatment. Let's say either for environmental reasons or there are EPA mandates. We won't get into the politics. I know some people don't trust this president, but you have the chart like dropping off as though there will never be major expenses for wastewater. I personally don't believe that. Mr. Matlos gave us a superb presentation about how we have to start removing, I'm not sure if they're chemicals, there are scary.
That's water, Mayor.
PCO.
We're just
so
randomly confusing things now.
No, this is specific consideration. So I'd like not to make the assumption that we won't, that all of a sudden you showed the chart dropping off to zero in fiscal year 2030. I think that's not a reasonable assumption to make. So let's not assume that we're going to have much lower expenses. In what city? The budget keeps growing. There's no way our expenses for infrastructure somehow will go to zero ever, in my opinion. So I think we're using some wrong assumptions in how, we'll be fine because the major wastewater expenses are past us.
I do
I
believe
don't
the
think that'll
number is
happen.
150,000. It looks like zero, but it's about 150,000 in case any of these new things go wrong. But yes.
That's inadequate. 150,000 is literally two consultancies the way you spend money. So no, I don't think we're prepared for instance, shifting to tertiary treatment, which maybe is better and would be less nitrogen and phosphorus going out the outfall off Deauville Beach but one example. So that's why I prefer to be a little more conservative in our spending, so we're ready when we face, look at as an example, the dock. No one expected a retaining wall to fail after 3.5 years. They're usually good for 20 or 30 years. So that's proof to me that we are being too overly optimistic in our forecasts of wastewater expenses, water expenses. It won't be 150,000 in the year 2030.
Can we
Thank you.
conclude this? Are there any commissioners that want to embellish what and support what Suzanne is saying or otherwise?
I'll go ahead and move to this slide, Mayor, if
Okay.
possible. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Just a
Gossett?
comment on that is that we have put in place a fund balance policy, which is for lack of a better term in some regards, a rainy day fund, so that there are funds available for emergencies. And, 2030 is a long way off. We do not know what will be coming by that time. There are some funds, Mr. Tedder's referred to about 150,000. It may not be enough, it may be enough. We just don't know. As you said, you can't predict the future. But I will say, though, that major investments in our infrastructure today and the next future years are a result of us not investing in previous years and kind of kicking the can down the road so that, well, we can push this, we can keep pushing this. I think this policy and projection that Mr. Tedder has put together is excellent in that regards of planning for the future, though, that we have that goal in mind of how to spend the money and appropriately spend the money so that we don't have these spikes in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years.
Thank you. Taylor?
Thank you. So this is our reforecast of the projected surplus with the year ending March 31st, 2025. So we have about 2.3 million in surplus in the water fund. The wastewater fund underperformed by about $697,000. And the general fund had a surplus of 4.5, and that does include 3 million of the loan proceeds from beach patrol financing and other miscellaneous underspending and operational line items that I was able to identify savings in. So this total projected surplus is $6.3 million, and the remainder of that beach patrol financing will be utilized in the 26 budget. So we do have some possible uses of the fiscal year 25 projected surplus, and ultimately you could earmark something today, you could wait, you could, really it's the purview of the commissioners, but we've listed all of the things that have been either brought up in the meetings or items that are needs or been mentioned in the past. So I thought I would turn this over to the commissioners to see if you have any discussion on this, and then we can move forward.
Mayor, if I could, please.
Commissioner Thayer?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you go back one slide?
Sure.
And we're going to go to the members of the public after we get through these slides, so prepare your questions and comments.
So I just wanted to very briefly talk about FY27. So this is our projected surplus for FY25, 6.3 million. Back on the first slide, where our budget shows a surplus of about 220,000 plus or minus, right? The point I wanted to call out for FY27 is that as Mr. Tedder and Mr. Miller will now have to work on, based on the net fund balance and net position policy we passed about a month ago, they have to come up with a plan in any situation where we have over that or under it. What I want to focus on right now is water. So we have about $10 million more in the water net position than we need based on that policy. So they're going to have to come up with a plan for that. Likely what will be part of that plan is next year being FY27, when we have to spend $3 million on PFAS, a likely, and again, I'm not necessarily saying what you should do, but we've had these conversations, likely we'll use that part of that 10 million to pay for that PFAS. So if we do that, that takes $3 million out of our expenses in FY27 and gives us a surplus of not $200,000, but $3.2 million. So 6.3 for 25, 200 plus or minus for 26, 3.2 for 27. We're somewhere in the $10 million, generating surpluses of about $10 million over those 3 years. So I think from a conservative perspective, we don't know what's going to go on with beach replenishment, but I think this puts us in a good spot should we have to pay for beach replenishment ourselves. Can you jump to the next slide for me, please? Okay. As well as considering some of these, I know Commissioner Good brought up the tax rate changes earlier. That's a June discussion, but that is something that I will probably support. We still have a lot of discussions to have about stormwater utility and what we're going to do with stormwater utility. But again, that in the FY27 projection, we do have $1.3 million in revenue there for stormwater utility fees. So fees, tax, whatever you want to call it. So again, if we're going to have this type of surplus, and again, we're not voting on 27 today, we may be in a position a year from now of not implementing that in FY27. Don't know what's going to happen in FY28, FY29. There are stormwater utility expenses, you know, in the 5-year CIP for 28, 29, and so on. But I think we could be in a situation for 27 where we don't need to implement the fee. We can use some of this surplus money. So that was really my point. I just wanted to talk, you know, talked earlier, overhauled the process, FY25 projection, FY26 budget, doing future year projections so we know where we're going to be financially and can start to think about, you know, how we move forward in our financial planning in 27, 28, and so on. Thank you, Mayor.
I guess you know, in terms of the slide that's up there, projected surplus, I'd like to entertain that in a future agenda when we're have more energy. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Quick question, Mayor, if I could, it's probably Mr. Miller. I know Mr. Dukes is not here, but so we have this 6.3, and I don't, how are we going to handle it? Let's just, for example, we decide not to do anything with that 6.3. So that 6.3, if we would do nothing at year end, audit gets done, automatically flows onto our balance sheet, net position, fund balance, which I don't think we want to do. I mean, and again, I don't know that we do or do not want to do, but what is the thinking? How from an accounting transaction perspective, what will we do? And if you don't know the answer and we need to wait for Mr. Dukes to come back, we can do that. So
If you,
Yeah, I think, you know, certainly for a future agenda, I think it's an appropriate discussion. So typically what happens is that surplus rolls into the fund balance or the net position. Again, we have the general fund, water fund, wastewater fund, depending on how those funds settle at the end of the year after the audit. Some will have a surplus, some may have a deficit. So then that will ultimately affect the fund balance and net position that's reported on the financial statements. You will see that in the future in the fund balance and net position policy as we update that annually. So if it does roll over to the fund balance, roll over to the net position, a year from then, you will see that reported on the fund balance and net position policy. And then at that time, we can make a determination as to what happens if it's overfunded, if it's underfunded. I think another thing that we could look at is with the current surplus, if we want to possibly consider restricting some of those funds, I think we could entertain something to that effect. I have not yet had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Dukes about that, but, you know, to your point about some concerns with upcoming, you know, stormwater projects in the future, 2 fiscal years from now, you know, how might we be able to start to set aside some funds, mainly with the surplus from the current fiscal year, to offset those expenses? You know, I think that's something we could look at as well. So I think there's some flexibility, but I think, you know, in a future meeting, we could have Mr. Dukes here and kind of elaborate on that in more detail.
and I can also lend the fact, so in my experience in Boulder City, what we did, so let's say you're in the budget year next month and you decide on one of these projects. Well, it's not budgeted. So in Nevada, the revised statutes allowed for a budget augmentation where you would realize the revenue and you can essentially change your budget to add that in. Here, it's called a budget amendment, and I'm still getting some questions answered related to exactly the process for that, but essentially that's what we would do. We would amend the budget to include whatever project you'd like to do, and then you could spend that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Good?
Yes, in fact, Mr. Mayor, you were reluctant to vote on on the real estate tax rollback or repeal, but the reason I think it's germane, and let's get things done. Yes, it's true that in June, we formally, I believe, under the terms of the charter, have to set the tax rate. That's true, in June. But we can now
And I
include in the budget.
I made a determination, we are not discussing the tax rate until a later time when it's advertised in the agenda. Period. I've made that.
But it's on the agenda. It's on the agenda item that Mr. Tedder and Mr. Miller put together for us. It's right here, 592,000.
That's right, but it's not intended to have a discussion period.
Okay, so at the June workshop, or even sooner, we'll put it on the agenda and discuss a repeal of the, I believe it was about 28 or 29% increase, which was totally unnecessary, especially when we're throwing all manner of money at merit increases that compound with salary and health insurance at 14 percentage points higher than the average for municipal governments. It's time for the property owners to enjoy all this largesse. And the second issue I have is that if indeed we enjoy such a wonderful surplus, I hope we will give notice to the public, but have a serious discussion of why we shouldn't fund the approximately $1 to $1.5 million per year for the next 10 to 15 years to fix, repair, upgrade our stormwater pipes. We should be able to fund it from current revenues in a way that we don't have to add an impact fee, which has tax disadvantages for residents. It's not like a property tax when they itemize, they can deduct that. An impact fee, you can't. It's like your trash service. It's a utility. They're not tax deductible. They're only tax deductible for business owners with Schedule C, rental property owners with Schedule E, and that's not a typical, we have a lot of full-time residents here for whom this ends up being a cost that they have to pay with after-tax dollars, which is expensive for them. So I hope we can have that discussion, because when you talk about a surplus, I'd like to use it in a way that benefits people, not for special projects and everything else like, streetscape or whatever else people are dreaming of. Thank you.
Do you
Thank
want to
you.
finish your last slide?
Yep.
Because I want to go to the members of the public before we do further discussion up here.
So I'm sure everyone's on the edge of their seats for this last slide. Today we are asking for budget adoption. The new budget year will start April 1 and end March 31st. So we will continue to analyze parking further for the next season in 2026, which is coming soon. And we'll be monitoring beach replenishment funding. We'll be working towards a 5-year forecast and financial plan once we get the 3-year complete. And then we'll be continuously examining the use of the surplus yearly. So with that, we can go to public comment. And of course, I'll be here for any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, so when the motion is made, what is the final figure that we're looking at? 41,831,000?
Want to use the revenue number.
43,770.
This one.
43,990.
This one, okay, all righty. Thank you, Taylor.
None of this is included in the 40, this is?
Correct.
Okay, no problem.
Members of the public, $43,993,059.67. 67 cents. Carolyn, would you like to speak? Would you make sure that microphone is on, please? State your name and relationship to the city.
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident and taxpayer. As a taxpayer, I fully supported the tax increase. I think it should be left alone. I'm just going to say that right now. I'll say it again when you talk about it. But I think the overall budget is a good budget. I think you all did a fantastic job with accuracy. There weren't a lot of swings from meeting to meeting. There weren't a lot of surprises. So I think that you all should be commended for that. Is it perfect? As Commissioner Thayer said, no. But no budget is ever perfect. But I think it is a good budget. I think your your employees are your biggest asset. I think you need to take care of them. I was on the fence about the healthcare, but the surrounding areas are doing it. It's not that big a deal to say 100%, and then you're on a level playing field. I came from the healthcare industry where, honestly, our benefits were horrible. So I think to the extent you can take care of people, I think that's a good idea. When you have lower paid employees, healthcare is a huge deal. So I fully support taking care of the employees, which is your biggest asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anybody else? Dottie? Walter?
Walter Brittingham on 23 Henlipen Avenue. First of all, I've watched the budget process, and I've been impressed, been frustrated, but in any case, I'd like to talk about the fire company. And everybody wants to be friends of the fire company, but I have a few what I think are irrational thoughts. The fire company has had and gotten rid of in the past working fire trucks, ski-doos. They had a 15 or 20-foot cargo trailer, which was sold out of private purchase, but based on a bid. It wasn't just wild. They have command-typed vehicles that are, we're talking about replacing one now. I don't know whether it's a command vehicle, the EMS vehicle. It's not medics, it's EMS. There was a rescue truck sold for $1 to Newcastle County dive team, which is just ridiculous. A lot of these things never hit the membership of the fire company, which is its own quasi-governmental organization. Some of the fire officers have allegedly made these decisions. The membership has not voted on them, and you have no oversight. I'm not asking for you to have oversight, but you have an opportunity. A few years ago, a gator was bought, which you discussed, I think, at the last meeting, and it was handled very well. But the discussion is the disposition of corporate equipment. So with a command vehicle and a medic supervisor vehicle and a chief's vehicle, and they asked for $50,000, I don't know which vehicle is going to be replaced. And it costs a lot of money to put the electronics in these. First of all, put the electronics, and then to get them hooked up and ready to go. So we're not talking about the police now and take-home vehicles, but some of these end up to be take-home vehicles. But I would think if you're going to give $50,000 just on a whim, because everybody wants to be nice to the fire company, and I am a life member of Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company, I think, like the Gator, and I think you were around at the time there, Mr. Mills, that you ought to ask them if they're going to sell excess rolling stock, et cetera, and the city's going to fund it, that hopefully it would be exposed to all of the public, that they can get the best price possible and not sold just on the high bidder, that only the fire company members' personal interest, which is not supposed to fund, to enter into this. But I think there ought to be some covenants that ought to be discussed with them, period, and it ought to be put into motion. I don't expect any of that, but it's time that it gets mentioned, and funding the fire company is good, but they're getting a lot of vehicles. I don't know how much more people they have. Mr. Gossett had a conversation when they got ready to buy the new aerial truck, and allegedly the chief was asked, what's the new truck going to have that the other trucks don't, and never got an answer back from the chief. At 20 years, a fire truck is not dead. It can be recertified, and the city could save some money. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy, anything?
Hi, Cindy Lovett, 4 Canal Street. Just in case I don't make the June meeting when we talk about the taxes, I also do not support rolling that tax back from the residents. I am a resident. I live in town for 17 years now. And when I tell people what my total taxes are, city, state, and county, they say to me per month. And I say no, per year. So I think the amenities we have in this town, my taxes are, I'm good with the number. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll keep that in mind for future discussion. Anybody else? Judy, Dottie? Nope. We'll bring it back here then for a future discussion, or I would entertain a motion. Of course, the motion would to be to adopt city budget for the fiscal year April 1, 2025 through March 31, 2026 in the amount of $43,993,059.67. Is there any additional discussion or a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed FY26 annual budget in the amount of $43,993,059.67. $43,993,059.67.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Patrick Gossett and a second by Commissioner Bunky Market to adopt the budget for the fiscal year April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. It's in front of us in the amount of $43,993,059.67. Is there any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I
Commissioner
would
Good?
just, thank you. I think everyone knows that I cannot support this budget. It is balanced by increased debt. It is rising far faster, like almost triple the inflation rate. That should set off some alarm bells in some people. There's been no significant attempt to limit expense growth. We have, for instance, benefits were given at the highest possible levels. Even though we have low turnover, we have a lot of long-term employees, especially in administration, where our salaries, these are the best jobs in Sussex County between salaries and benefits. So there was a dystopia at the meeting, I believe, either February 10th or 21st, where people were, we had the HR person whom Mr. Tedder used sort of as his envoy to tell us that somehow we can't recruit, we're going to date, these people are going to go elsewhere. They aren't going to go elsewhere because they are in the best possible place because our salaries are much higher than Lewis or Dewey or Bridgeville. And some of those places do not have 100% health insurance. In fact, one of them has only 80% coverage. And as I have explained, the average for municipalities is 86%, which is very generous. Private sector and federal employees actually get less coverage than that average 86%. They typically get about 75 to 80%. So until there's an attempt to restrain spending and rein in employee costs, staff size, and benefits, I would like to make one last attempt. This is such a great opportunity not to grow personnel, to eliminate the Director of Community Planning position.
We have a motion and a second on the floor, so you're not allowed to make any motions at this point.
Okay, well, so
Please-
I would
please
like
wrap it
to
up.
say this budget is balanced with a loan that is divided into, we're applying in fiscal year 2026, which starts on April 1st in 10 days. We're using 3.017 million of it, and then the plan is to take the other 2.5 million to prop up the fiscal year 2027 budget. And I know that some people believe this is a way to be responsible, but I think it's dereliction of duty, and I'm very disappointed that there wasn't compromise on any of the benefits or spending. I mean, of course, all the special interests like Main Street Library, they got, the museum even rose by more than 50% versus the previous year. So there's never a project that this mayor and most of the rest of the board would ever decline and say no to. And there's something wrong that there's never, ever an ability to say, this is beyond our budget. let's either defer it or not, not approve it. And that never happens here, and it's a little scary. And I also think it's disingenuous to pretend that by increasing debt service and taking on a $5.5 million loan in early December 2024, that we have in any way balanced the budget in Rehoboth Beach.
Thank you, Suzanne. With that, I'm going to make a roll call vote, or if you want to discuss it, you can, but then I'm going to call a roll call
I
vote.
just wanted to make a quick comment, if I may, for the public that may be watching, that we're doing this budget, and if we accept this budget, it's without any increases in taxes, without any increase in new increases in the mercantile tax and the rental tax. All of that's already been approved in prior years. So we're actually paying our bills with the money that we're taking in, and I think that the public needs to know that.
Thank you. And so I'm going to do a roll call vote. Again, the motion is to adopt the budget in front of us. Commissioner Mark Saunders,
Yes.
Commissioner Suzanne Good.
Nay. Do I have to state my
No,
reasons again?
no, you
I'm-
don't. No, please.
I don't think you want to hear them again.
Commissioner Gossett,
Yes.
Commissioner Markert.
Yes, and if I just may make hopefully a brief comment, which is, I think this budget process was done extremely well. I want to commend the city staff and all involved, City Manager Taylor Tedder, Assistant City Manager Evan Miller, the finance team, the department heads, Jean Lee and Human Resources. To me, I thought there was a lot that we learned through this whole process. Clearly, I feel certainly this is the best budget process I've ever been through with the city, and I think it reflects well on certainly the qualifications of the people that we have working for the city. And I certainly echo the comment made before about our city staff is our greatest asset. I also want to mention, I just want to state that this is, and I think I've said this before many times, this is a budget. It's a plan. There's numbers in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to spend everything, and we're not necessarily going to get all the revenue that we project that we're going to get. But it's a plan that we adhere to. On one of the charts, I'm not going to recommend that we go back to it, but if you noticed that when they compared budget to actual, the actual was typically at or below the budget line, meaning you can work on a budget, you can change direction, you can make accommodations. It's merely a plan. And I think this process was done judiciously. I think we have great people on this panel that are able to analyze this and give input. And I think the citizens of the city benefit greatly from that. So I very wholeheartedly vote yes.
Commissioner Thayer.
I as well vote yes. And for the sake of time, I will just echo everything that Mr. Markert just said. Great job, Mr. Tedder, Mr. Miller, Mr. Dukes, the entire finance staff. So thank you.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye to adopt the budget also. And I would like to echo Commissioner Markert's sentiments, especially applauding Taylor and Evan and the rest of the staff. I thought it was an excellent process also. And I appreciate Commissioner Markert's explanation of the budget itself, that is a plan. With that, the vote is 5-7 in favor, and the budget is adopted. With that, we'll
5
move.
to 1? You said 5 to 7.
5 to 1.
you.
What did I say? 5 to 1, 6 total voters. With that, our next item of business is new business, of which there is none. Commissioner announcements and comments. If Vice President Patrick Gossett would join me up front, we have a proclamation to read that's somewhat self-explanatory. We don't have the recipient here. Unfortunately, she's unable to be here, but you all might recognize her name. And I'm going to let Patrick read that.
This is a proclamation for Mabel Granke Day, March 30th, 2025. Whereas Mabel Granke was born on March 30th, 1925, and lived in the city of Rehoboth Beach for over 35 years. And whereas Mabel is a model of constructive citizen activism and has always fought to improve the quality of life in her community, written hundreds of letters to the editor, and attended many Rehoboth Beach Commission, Sussex County Council, DelDOT, and DENREC meetings to comment on issues of importance to her, including Lake Gerard and Silver Lake, affordable housing, traffic and parking, land use, improving the natural environment, and many other topics. And whereas Mabel has distinguished herself as a dedicated public servant, serving on the Montgomery County Planning Commission and the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission. And whereas Mabel has also demonstrated a commitment to the betterment of Rehoboth Beach and Sussex County, giving her time and considerable knowledge to many organizations, including Save Our Lakes Alliance 3, Village Improvement Association, West Rehoboth Land Trust, of which she is a founding board member, the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Seminar, Delaware State Parks and Recreation Commission, Emmanuel Shelter, Cape Henlopen State Park Master Plan Steering Committee, Citizen Coalition, and the Delaware Source Water Protection Program. And whereas, among other recognitions, Mabel has been recognized with the 2017 Citizenship Award from the Village Improvement Association, where she has also served as a former president, the 2020 Community Advocate Award from the Community Resource Center, and the first annual Flame of Democracy Award from the League of Women Voters of Sussex County in 2010. Now, therefore, we, Mayor Stan Mills and Board Vice President Patrick Gossett, along with the Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim March 30th, 2025 as Mabel Granke Day in the city of Rehoboth Beach to honor her 100th birthday. Thank you.
And I'd like to make a clarification, and that's Montgomery County, Maryland.
Maryland,
right?
okay.
Not
Pennsylvania.
Virginia. And also, I know we're supposed to be delicate with ages and women, but I think when you hit 100 years old, that goes out the door, doesn't it? So we're going to go visit her and present this to her in person. So we wanted to share this with you. Thank you very much. That was Commissioner Gossett's idea, and I thank you for coming up with that and recognizing her age there. Next thing on the agenda is additional commissioner announcements. Does anybody have anything? If not, we'll go to review future meeting dates. The next meeting of the Board of Commissioners is Monday, April 7th, 9 a.m. That's a workshop meeting. And with that, we come to the last item of business, which is citizen comment, typically for items off topic. Is anybody, Carolyn, you're not shaking your head? Nobody's shaking their head. And with that, no further business. We'll adjourn this meeting at 4:02 p.m. Thank you very much.